alpha husband wants to end our relationship just because I went on a date with other guy.
It was just a simple dinner, and I can swear that it was nothing serious, but now my husband is making it out to be something bigger. Guys, I don't understand how a harmless dinner with a guy friend has suddenly got my husband all riled up. How complicated can a marriage be? Why is he trying to make a mountain out of a molehill? My husband has refused to see me, or even talk to me, just because I went to dinner with a guy friend of mine. I don't even know where to start from. My name is Agatha, and I'm a 27-year-old housewife from Florida. I'm married to Tony, a 29-year-old dentist. I know some of you might be surprised at me tagging myself as a housewife. I always get looks of judgment from people whenever I say I'm a housewife who's married to a dentist. The combination is always confusing for them. Well, I'm a housewife, and my husband and I just got married a year ago. We dated for over 3 years before we got married. So even though there's fire on the mountain in my marriage right now, I'll describe it as the best decision I've ever made. I love my husband a lot, and our marriage has been the definition of great. My husband has always been an alpha male, and everything he does shows that. He's a no-nonsense man, and he doesn't take disrespect at all. I've never had a problem with that, and I've supported all of his strict mannerisms. But this latest development has me doubting it all. He's overreacting, and I'm 100% sure I'm not wrong. I don't understand why he's ghosting me all of a sudden just because of a single dinner. It's nothing outrageous, yet he's acting like I broke the Constitution. I get that he's an alpha male and they all have huge egos, but hold on. We all have to draw the line somewhere, right? I'm very upset, and that's why I want to share this on Reddit. I want to tell you everything that happened before asking for your opinions. I decided to ask total strangers for their opinions because I believe that the opinions of strangers are always honest and unfiltered. They never lie because they really don't care about your feelings. Before I met my husband, I've always been an antisocial person with little to no friends. But I had 2 friends in both elementary school and high school, a boy and a girl, and they were actually siblings. We also went to the same college and graduated together. I'm very close to those siblings because they practically stood by me all through school. I'm closer to the guy who is named Kenneth. We were practically bros, LOL. But Kenneth and I lost contact after college because my phone got stolen and we no longer lived in the same town. As for his sister, she got married years ago and moved to another country with her husband. My husband, Tony, is literally upset because Kenneth contacted me recently. If you're wondering how he contacted me, I'll tell you. So my husband and I were having dinner one night before something unexpected happened. It was very unexpected, and I never saw it coming. My phone suddenly rang, and when I picked it up, it was an unknown number, and the caller didn't talk for a very long time. I cut the call since the caller was taking time to pick up. I didn't want to waste time because I was at dinner with my husband, and we have a rule not to use phones during dinner except it was important. I thought it was a call from my sister because I'd been expecting her call, and that was why I picked up. The caller kept calling even after I muted the call several times. My husband finally told me to answer the call, and so I did. I was shocked to discover that it was a call from Felicia, Kenneth's sister. I was very surprised because we had lost contact for years. We even lost contact way before my phone got stolen. The fact that she just called me out of the blue was very abnormal for me, so I asked her if there was any problem. So guys, there was really a problem just like I suspected. She was crying and sobbing over the phone. I was really shocked and I didn't even know what to do. I waited for her to calm down before asking her what the problem was. She told me she had something important to tell me and wanted to see me the next day. I was very shocked to hear that from her. I was shocked because the last time I'd seen Felicia was on her wedding day. She moved to another country with her husband, just like I mentioned earlier. So I didn't get how she planned on meeting me. I asked her how she planned on meeting me, and that was when she dropped the bomb. She told me she was in Florida, and she had been in Florida for over 2 days. Yes, guys, that's the truth. I had a lot of questions to ask her just that night alone, but she promised to answer all my questions when we met the next day. I told my husband everything that had happened, and he told me he'd drive me there the next day. When I got there the next day and introduced Felicia to my husband, she told me she wanted to speak to just me alone. I knew that my husband was offended, but I had no choice then to agree to her request. Tony gave me just 30 minutes to talk to her, lol. I'm not even joking at all. He was angry that she requested privacy when he was my husband. I won't even lie, I understand where he's coming from when it comes to that aspect. But I had to speak to Felicia privately because she looked tired and unwell. Tony waited for me in the car while I spoke to Felicia. I never expected her to say all the things she said to me. To be honest, I was left speechless for a very long time because I found it hard to understand why her marriage ended. Yes, Felicia told me her marriage ended because she cheated on her husband. Apparently, she slept with her husband's coworker, and he found out. He sent her out of the house and made her homeless in a foreign country. Felicia told me that she had no choice but to return back to Florida. What she did was very strong, and I have no excuse for her, but I felt very sorry for her. She looked like she lost a lot of weight. Well, I'm losing a lot of weight now that my husband has decided to ghost me. The worst part is that I didn't even cheat. I had to ask Felicia how she got my number because I was honestly curious. She just told me that she spoke to some of her friends on Facebook who were friends with my sister, and that's how she contacted my sister and asked for my phone number. I didn't get why my sister did not tell me she shared my phone number ahead of time, but I later discovered that sister sent me a message on WhatsApp, but I didn't know. I can't be the only one who is not that social, right? Even though I didn't want to sound like a heartless person, I had to ask Felicia why she needed to see me. She told me that she urgently needed some cash and accommodation. Apparently, Felicia had been living in a hotel for 2 days, and the little money she had left was almost finished. I felt really bad for her, and I had to remember our past as close friends, so I promised to get back to her. I'm a housewife with no particular income. I had to speak to my husband about it first, before I made the move. After the meeting with Felicia, I told my husband everything she told me when we got back home. Let me just put it this way. Tony was not happy about Felicia's request at all. He didn't even like the fact that I agreed to think about her request. He was very angry, and he even refused to help me. He kept saying that she deserved what she got, and that cheating on her husband was very deceitful. I also believed that Felicia deserved what she got, but I could not just fold my hands. She was once one of my closest friends, and I had just 2. We practically grew up together, so I had to help her. My husband and I were literally at loggerheads over that case, and I think that's exactly where our problems began. He didn't like the fact that I was determined to help her at all, and he never missed a chance to make that clear to me. Since Tony refused to assist me financially, I had to take out money from my savings. Even though I'm a housewife, I still have small businesses that I run. I give the money to my sister, and she runs the business. Since Tony made it clear that he didn't want to get involved in the drama with Felicia, I just gave her some money on my own. She was very grateful, and she even started crying. I was very touched, guys, and I honestly felt like crying too. I never imagined that my close friend would end up like that. I said my goodbyes to her even though she made it clear that she'd still be in Florida for a long time. I had to cut all contact with her because I knew that Tony would not like the idea of me being friends with a woman that cheated on her husband. I know my husband very well, so I made sure I made no mistake. Even after cutting all contacts with her, Tony still made sure I never secretly snuck out to see her. I didn't see anything wrong with that because I knew just how strict my husband is. To be honest, I do not want my husband to be in contact with a guy that cheated on his wife, too. That's why I decided to follow his wishes. Even though I used to agree with him, his stance on this particular case actually makes me quite angry. Let me get straight to the point now and tell you all how I got in contact with Kenneth. Few months after Felicia contacted me, I got another unexpected call. It was Kenneth who called me. To be sincere, even when Felicia asked me for money, I never asked her how Kenneth was faring. I didn't see the need to ask her because I assumed that he would have been doing poorly if she asked me for help instead of him. I didn't even ask about Kenneth at all, but on this particular day I was shocked that Kenneth called me. He told me he was very grateful to me and that he owed me a lot. I asked him why, and he told me that Felicia informed him that I'd provided for her when she was broke. I was actually embarrassed that he felt the need to thank me for doing something for my own old friend. I told him not to worry about it and that it was my pleasure. Isn't that what we all say when we're tired of getting too many thanks? Well, I did the same thing. Kenneth didn't seem to want to stop. He told me that there was so much he had to tell me. He told me that a lot had happened over the years, and he would like to tell me all about it. Of course, that was the first time in years that I was talking to him. He was practically my closest friend because he was closer to me than my sister. The fact that I suddenly got a call from him unraveled me. Help me out here, guys. Was I wrong for not immediately saying no? This is an old friend that had been my friend for years. I had no malicious intentions, and that's why I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't even say yes immediately. I told him that I'd think about it first and give him a reply after speaking to my husband. That was all I said to him. I knew that Felicia must have told him I had a husband, but I had to say it again, just in case he doubted her. Talking to Tony about it was not easy at all. In fact, it was actually very far from easy. I knew that Tony would not like that idea at all. He didn't even want me speaking to Felicia. But I had to try first. Telling him was the only option because I knew that I would feel bad if he went to see his old female friend without letting me know first. One experiment I like to do in our marriage is that I like to make sure I do not do what I would not like my husband to do to me. It works most of the time, and that is what helps in our communication skills. But now, I don't think we really have much communication skills because he's been ghosting me for days. When I spoke to him about it, his reaction was exactly how I pictured it. He didn't like the fact that both brother and sister suddenly wanted to see me after years simultaneously. He knew about Kenneth because I used to tell him about Kenneth even before we started dating officially. I used to tell him that Kenneth was a very good friend of mine and that we suddenly lost contact. Tony told me that he didn't want me to go. I didn't agree at all, and that was how we started having a lot of arguments. For me, it was not a big deal because I just wanted to go see a friend. I'd not seen him for years and I just wanted to see how he was faring. The part that baffles me the most is that Kenneth and I never even dated or had a romantic relationship. We were just close friends, and that was all there was to it. I can even swear right now that Kenneth and I never even shared or deep hug, not to even talk of a kiss. That is why I never agreed with Tony's decision not to let me see him. The only reason I even felt the need to ask for permission is because Kenneth is a guy, and I would not want my husband to see the opposite gender without telling me. I was not ready to back down, and Tony was also not ready to back down. Kenneth kept calling me and asking me if I had made up my mind yet. I discovered that he had to go on a business trip and that I was the reason it was still in Florida. I decided to wait one more week and see if Tony would change his mind, but nothing changed. That was when I decided to go see Kenneth without Tony's permission. I didn't want to keep making him stay longer in Florida when he had work to do. I also found it ridiculous that I could not even go see an old childhood friend of mine. I had to make that decision because I had wasted enough time waiting for Tony to come around. When I asked Tony to pick the date and time we should meet, he proposed that we meet at a restaurant at 6 p.m. I didn't like the fact that we were meeting in the evening, and I told him that. But he told me he had work that day, and that was why we had to meet in the evening. I just wanted to get the meeting over with, so I agreed. I left a note for Tony before he came back from work, so he would know where I went. Tony usually came back from work by 7 p.m., so I knew that I might not come back early before he came back from work. That's why I left a note. To be honest, I left up to 4 notes at different places in the house, so he would be able to see at least one. That was just my little way of making sure that he did not worry about where I was. At the end of the day, all my efforts were in vain, because Tony did not even care about all the majors I went through to make sure that he didn't misunderstand things. When I went to the restaurant to see Kenneth, I made it clear to him that I had to get back home early, so we could only talk for a maximum of 1 hour. He had no problem with that, and that was how he started telling me all about everything that had been going on in this life. He told me how Felicia refused to contact him after her husband sent her away, because she was scared of getting scolded by him. That finally made a lot of sense because I realized that she was feeling ashamed. Kenneth told me that he was now a real estate agent. I was really happy for him because I'd always known that he wanted to become a real estate agent. We talked about Felicia and how she's trying to get her life back together, and then we talked about all the developments in our life. It was nice to talk to an old friend after a long while. I didn't even finish the food before I told him I had to go. He told me he understood, and then he congratulated me on my marriage. I bade him goodbye before taking a taxi and going back home. So guys, That's literally how all the drama began. I went home and met drama. Literally. It was like there was fire on the mountain. Even before I stepped foot into the house, I could feel the tension from where I stood at the door. I don't even know how I can describe it to you all. My husband made a scene, and it was literally very surprising. Before I could even greet Tony, he started yelling at me continuously. He gave me no room to talk or even explain myself, and that was the most painful part. I didn't even think I had a reason to explain until I fought the anger and aggression he displayed. He started accusing me of cheating on him. I told him that I did not cheat on him and that I just went to dinner with Kenneth. Nothing I said seemed to be making any sense to Tony. He seemed to be more focused on everything he believed I'd done. He asked me why I went to the dinner without informing him first. I told him that it was because he'd refused even after almost 2 weeks of trying to persuade him. Tony told me that I could have still called him and told him where I was headed to. I asked him if he saw the notes I left behind, and he told me that none of those counted. According to him, I'd disrespected him by going to see a guy friend without informing him first. Tony did not even believe that I did not do anything with Kenneth. He was very determined to believe that something fishy had happened. I'm even honestly exhausted after everything that's been going on for the past few days. I can't even begin to state how traumatized I've been. I was trying to explain and tell Tony that nothing out of the ordinary happened. But the more I tried to explain, the more Tony kept talking over me. I am not even making things up or trying to lie. I'm basically saying the truth just as it is. I don't think there's any reason to lie or omit information when I am here trying to get advice on what to do. I'm just saying everything as it is, without any filters. The argument lasted for hours, and it was clear to me that Tony was not ready to see things from my own perspective. He told me that it was disrespectful that I choose to go see an old friend rather than listen to him. He made it seem like I'd chosen Kenneth over him. I used to hear that men had huge egos, but I've only recently experienced it. It seems like Tony's ego is bruised. I think what makes it worse is even the fact that it was dinner. Tony kept asking why we could not meet at a cafe or even in front of a coffee shop. He said he could not accept the fact that his wife left the house at 6 p.m. in the evening to go see a guy friend and have dinner before coming back home. He told me that there was nothing I could say to justify the fact that I had disrespected him. He also made it clear that he did not like the fact that I did not tell him before going that day. Even though I'll still keep saying that I told you my head of time, and he kept rejecting it, so I had no choice, I do understand that he was still angry. But I think it's just outrightly outrageous that he would not speak to me because of that. If he didn't just want to speak to me, it would be understandable. But the fact that it doesn't even want to see me or interact with me is just the highest level of wickedness. We are married. Misunderstandings happen and couples fight. They settle and they move past it. Nothing even happened. Not even a hug was shared. So why is Tony finding it hard to move past this? That night, I actually believed that he would forget all about it the next day after I apologized to him again. I went to sleep in the living room that day because it was obvious that he did not want to see me. I woke up early the next morning and prepared breakfast. I tried talking to him or even starting a little conversation, but all my efforts were in vain. I was very worried because I did not expect Tony to take up that matter like that. The fact that he even knows that it was just an ordinary dinner and nothing happened yet, he still chooses to remain cold and distant is what angers me the most. I want my husband back, and I'm honestly tired of having to beg for him to even look at him. I don't want our marriage to suffer because of something like that. That's why I'm trying my best to put my own ego aside and try to make this work. But I guess I'm married to the most strict alpha male. He never wants to change anything, he says, and I can see that he is determined to stay angry. It's a lot of pressure on me right now, and I don't even know how to feel. I'm living in the same house with my husband, but we are not even interacting like neighbors. I don't know how to even explain the level of hurt I feel. I'm even starting to feel guilty, even though I know that I did nothing wrong. I kept telling him for almost 2 weeks yet. His answer was always no. I could not pass by a lifetime opportunity to see my childhood friend. For what might have been the last time, I'm not saying that I want to see my ex-boyfriend. I'm saying that I want to see my old childhood friend. There's a difference between those two things, and the meaning is completely different. I decided to speak to my sister because she is literally the closest person to me. She's the one person that understands me even before I open my mouth to sleep. When I spoke to her, she suggested that she spoke to him on my behalf. She came over to the house one evening for dinner, and that was the first dinner in days when Tony agreed to stay at the dining table with me. My sister asked him why he was not talking to me, and Tony was very reluctant to speak. He said that he did not want to talk about it, but my sister was persistent. That's when Tony finally said that he did not like the idea of me meeting up with two siblings simultaneously. He also said that he did not like the fact that Felicia had cheated on her husband, and I decided to help her, even after he refused. Apparently, he did not like the idea of me meeting up with the brother of a girl who had cheated on her husband with his co-worker. According to him, Felicia and her brother were a bad influence, and the fact that the both of them suddenly wanted to start up a friendship did not sit well with him. I tried to make him understand that I was nothing like Felicia, and that I would never even think of cheating on him. He said he found it hard to believe that when I went ahead to go see Kenneth without telling him. We were literally back to square one, and the back and forth began again. He told my sister that he needed time to think and that he does not want to talk to me right away. After the dinner, my sister advised me to just give him time and not try to rush him. I agreed before seeing her off. To be honest, guys, even though I agreed, I don't want to follow that advice at all. I have read about many of such situations online, and this is usually how couples end up separating. A small issue can turn into a full-blown fight if it is not taken care of at the right time. One thing about marriages is that there is nothing like a break or time to think. Once the couple starts spending time away from each other and leaving problems unsolved, larger issues begin to arise and the couple is faced with bigger problems. I don't want that to be the situation in my marriage, and that is why I am here on Reddit today. I want to find a way to make peace with my husband without pushing him too much. I have realized that he has a big ego and does not like the idea of his wife choosing to go to have dinner with another man rather than listening to him. Even though I still think he's being too cruel, I don't want to disregard his feelings just because it does not resonate with what I believe. He has a right to think whatever he wants to think, and I have the responsibility of clearing up what I started. My sister is also trying to make me understand that I shouldn't have left that evening without giving him a call first. After writing this out and reading it over and over again, I also believe that I could have done things differently. I don't have the same opinions I had when I first started this, but I still have my opinions. Please help me, Reddit. I need your help because my marriage is literally falling before my eyes. I cannot just stand by and watch everything drown because of a stupid misunderstanding. It's almost like I am now in Felicia's position, just that I haven't been kicked out yet. Imagine being in the position of someone that ran to you for help. Well, it is not a great position to be, and I hope that things don't get that bad. Hopefully it won't, because I don't want to suffer for something I didn't do. It's almost like I'm regretting being a good Samaritan. I should have just ignored everything, right? But no. At the end of the day, I owe some form of respect and loyalty to the friends I once had. I'll choose my husband in marriage over those friends in a heartbeat. So I hope it doesn't get to that. Please don't leave me hanging, Reddit. I'm literally counting on you all to come up with a solution for me. I'm going to appreciate each and every comment I get, and don't be hesitant to judge me. I knew exactly what I was getting into before putting this post up here. My husband will soon be back from work, and even though he does not speak to me now, I don't want him to see me typing on the computer with so much focus. It will be very embarrassing for him to find out what I'm doing. Till the next update, guys. Update. It's the troubled wife again. LOL. This time I think that some of my troubles, or even most of my troubles, have been lifted off my shoulders. I cannot help but thank you all for it. It's the woman who refused to take permission, lol. The comments even had me crying and laughing at the same time. I have so many nicknames and they are so long. Not even the most controversial Reddit stories I've read have this many funny comments. It's a bittersweet feeling, actually, and I think sharing my problems with strangers did not happen to be as bad as I thought it would be. It was bad, just not as horrible I imagined it would be. Most of the comments advised me not to let two old friends get in the middle of my relationship with my husband. I even got many people telling me to call Kenneth and have him apologize to my husband. To be honest, that was a little bit outrageous for me. I never thought of doing that because I knew that it would lead to an awkward scenario. I didn't want Kenny to find out I have issues with my husband, and I didn't want to give my husband the impression that I was still in contact with Kenneth. Some things are to be left private, and there are just some boundaries that should never be crossed. Look at me talking so seriously, like I did not end up doing exactly what I'm condemning. I know it sounds stupid, but hey, you all suggested it, so I guess we are in this boat together. I saw most people saying that it was unfair for me to be the one getting punished for only trying to help and honor my own old friends. Many people also said that they saw the side my husband was coming from and that it was not unusual for him to feel disrespected. When I showed the comments to my sister, she also agreed that it was not okay for me to be alone in this issue when Felicia and Kenneth were out there living their life. Felicia is also a part of this issue because my husband cannot just stand the fact that she cheated on her husband. Since it was the only option I had to call Kenneth and set up a meeting with him and my husband. Please get me wrong. The reason I set up the meeting was not so Kenneth would beg my husband on my behalf. I only set up the meeting so Kenneth would apologize to my husband for setting up a meeting at 6 p.m. I realized that if I was in my husband's shoes, I would also want an apology from him and the woman that set up the time. The comments really made me calm down and say things from a different light. I called Kenneth and asked them to come to Florida immediately. He told me his schedule was tied and he had work. But when I told him what it was about, he did not refuse, because he agreed that he owed me a favor for what I'd done for Felicia. Even though it was not something I would have ever thought of doing on a normal day because it was just too awkward and outrageous, I had to do it because I was out of options. If you're wondering how the meeting went, it was not as messy as I thought it would be. Don't get me wrong, it was definitely awkward and unusual. It was even more uncomfortable than I thought to see my husband and Kenneth in the same room. I'm just trying to say that things could have gone south really fast, but it didn't. Kenneth did not hesitate to ask for my husband's apology and explained to him that he had to work the whole day, and that was why I decided to set up the meeting that late. He also said that he had to catch up on a flight early the next morning and knew that there would be no opportunity for us to meet again, so he had no choice. My husband accepted his apology, and that was it. He didn't even bother to touch his food or try to make conversation with Kenneth. When I tried speaking to my husband later that evening, we had a long conversation, and he made me understand that the only reason he got angry was because I had gone in the evening, and I didn't even think of calling him on the phone. He said that made him feel disrespected, but he had to let it go because of how dedicated I had been to settling our issues. He also respected the majors I'd gone through just to make sure that I respected this opinion. He said he did not like the fact that I set up a meeting with Kenneth and that it was awkward, but he liked the fact that I had gone through such extreme measures. According to Tony, he wanted to teach me a lesson and make me understand that in a marriage, it was right to respect your partner's opinion. I told him that I had learnt my lesson and would not be doing that again. I got to understand that if I was in my husband's shoes, and he wanted to see an old female friend that I did not really resonate with, it would also make me upset to find out he still went to see the same person at 6 p.m. in the evening, even after I refused. I learnt my lesson from how cold and distant my husband had been towards me. I'm definitely going to start respecting certain boundaries, because no friendship is worth my marriage with my husband. At the end of the day, friends grow apart and then move on with their own lives. Felicia, for example, had gotten married years ago and moved to another country with her husband. She even got married before me, and we lost all contact. If she didn't cheat on her husband and was left stranded, she would have never even tried to contact me. That is not worth running my marriage for. I do not regret helping her, but I do regret how I went to dinner with Kenneth without getting my husband's full permission. Everything is over now, and I am wiser and stronger. I'm just very grateful that my marriage did not suffer a huge loss because of something so trivial. Big thanks to all the readers out there. You all don't know how much help you were to me. Peace and bye. You know, sometimes we do things just because of lust or greed, or I don't know how I can put this, but we ladies sometimes do things without thinking, and when karma visits us, we start regretting and end up asking yourself what is wrong with you, or what if I did this or that? And if I didn't listen to, I wouldn't have gotten myself into this mess. A lot of things start ringing in your mind, and reality kicks in like an unexpected tornado. To tell the truth, I regret and will always regret what I did, because it showed how weak and not being able to avoid temptation I was. I miss him so much, but there is actually nothing I could do. I messed up, and it is not anyone's fault but mine. I had brought this upon myself. My stupid actions cost me my future love. I didn't know, okay. I got tempted only to find out that I got tempted in the wrong place and at the wrong time. Now I'm suffering the consequences. Please tell me what I should do. So my story goes like this. I, female 25, met this handsome man at a grocery store. I was going with my little sister, 13, trying to buy a few things for the family since it was almost time for Christmas. So this handsome man came into the food aisle that we were in. I think he was lost because he asked where he could get packs of M&Ms. I directed him to another store that sold bulk packs because he wanted bulk packs. My loud sister then told the guy that he looked cute. How embarrassing. Sigh. To my surprise, the guy smiled at her and appreciated the compliment. Few days later, I found out that he was actually staying around the neighborhood. I asked myself how come he didn't know where the M&Ms bulk packs were sold if he was around. He liked morning jogs, so I saw him when I was taking out the trash. He saw me and greeted. I had thought he had forgotten about me, but surprisingly he didn't. So we had small chats and exchanged our names. He told me that he was Kevin, male 26. Our good conversation was cut off, but some old man, who I later figured out was his stepdad. So the man interrupted our conversation to tell him that he should get inside. I asked myself how old was Kevin to be told to get inside like he was a small boy. I don't know what tempted me to this old man, but whatever it was, I regret it so much. Before Kevin went inside his house, he asked for my numbers and told me that he would like to have friends around the neighborhood, since he had recently moved this side. I gladly gave him that, and that was how we started getting along. I remember when he used to visit me at home, my parents welcomed him with warm hands. We got along pretty well. He had a very charming smile, I admired everything about him. When they say God took his precious time to make the most perfect human being. That was what he did with Kevin. His mother and father surely took time and chose which semens to use in order to give birth to a perfect man like him. As we got along, his stepdad would sometimes shout at him for spending time with me. I really don't know why. He was acting like I was the bad girl that any parent wouldn't be near their children. As much as I am an extrovert, I loved and still love going out and having fun. I was not a rebellious child that disappointed his parents. I was working at one of the good accounting firms in New York, name withheld for personal reasons, so I was not a disappointing child. So I would take Kevin out for some drinks as friends since he was not from Aurora, so I decided to show him our small town. I heard that he was visiting his mother since she was married to the stepdad, while he lived in Jersey City with his siblings only. Our friendship was a bliss, but his stepdad didn't like it, but we continued being friends despite his disapproval. One day I went to work, and to my surprise, Kevin's stepdad came to the office with regards to his business that was under rocks. He needed a tax manager to foresee where his business's tax money was going because in his own knowledge, he was paying his business tax. So my boss transferred him to me, and I managed to find what was wrong with his business accounts. So I found out that his accountant was actually stealing money from his business, and he was not paying taxes as he was supposed to. That time I didn't even tell Kevin that his stepdad had come to my workplace because I respected my work ethics and protocols. So everything that I was discussing with my clients were confidential, and I didn't think he knew that his stepdad was going through a tax crisis. I once suspected a lot of pretense between them, but he was tolerating him for his mom's sake. And Kevin loved his mom to a point that he would rather invade a space of someone who didn't like him so he would see his mom. The relationship he had with his mom was really beautiful. His mom was a housewife. So you understand why Kevin loved visiting her. Because I am sure if she was working, he was not going to visit because his stepdad was home most of the time. I think that stepdad was into something illegal, I don't know what, but he was doing something doggy. He looked a bit off and intimidating. One would think he was a serial killer. I once asked Kevin how he was putting up with his stepdad and how his mom agreed to marry a scary man like that. To my surprise, my father was a friend of the stepdad. I found out that during a Thanksgiving holiday, Mom had invited them. I didn't like the way he was looking at me. I had noticed him looking at me like I was his favorite candy at a candy store. He was undressing me with his eyes, and that made me really uncomfortable. But I didn't tell that to anyone or took it seriously because he was old and my father's friend, and I couldn't just say something that I had no proof of, right? The stepdad kept coming to my workplace, claiming he needed help with his business books. I didn't understand why because he had employees in his business, unless he was doing something illegal. But nonetheless, even those who do illegal businesses have employees, right? So it puzzled me to see him more often at my workplace, worst part, asking for my help. While he acts like a crazy bull when he is at his house or when he sees me with Kevin, he would just become, I don't know how I can put, maybe a bear that is high on cocaine, trying to explain the stepdad's crazy act whenever I'm with Kevin. Time passed. Kevin kept coming to visit his mother, and we would spend a lot of time together. One would think we were dating, but we were not, because my mother once asked me what was going on between Kevin and I because she had seen the way he looked at me and the way he suddenly loved visiting his mom. I didn't pay any attention to that, because it didn't come to me that his visitations had become more regular than before. To tell the truth, the more I spent time with Kevin, the more I fell for him. I don't know if it was just a meaningless crush or it was the love that I felt, but I was feeling something for him. I wanted and longed for more than a friendship, you know. But I would just tell myself that I was crazy if I thought I would get a perfect guy like Kevin. Surely he had a perfect girlfriend like him in Jersey City, maybe a model, I don't know. I tried showing him hints that I wanted more than a friendship, but he would either act dumb or he would bluntly ignore any action I did. I know it was kind of sluttish of me to try and show the guy that I wanted him, but I couldn't hold myself. His lips were so appetizing to a point that sometimes I would just stare at them when he talks and imagine myself tasting them someday. It's crazy, right? Funny thing that had happened was that whenever I spent time with Kevin, he would tell me that one day he would make me his lover. He was a smooth and sweet talker, you know. Yes, I felt the same way as him, but I never thought he was serious about what he said. So I took it as a joke. He would always remind me that one day he was going to fetch me, so I would move with him to Jersey City, and that I was his future lover. But he wanted to fix something first. I took all that as a joke and thought he was just saying everything, because he wanted me to feel special. Not knowing that he was actually confessing his true feelings, I was pretty much in denial because there was no way a guy like Kevin would see a future with just a simple girl like me. I was just a simple and ordinary girl from Aurora who had a good job but was not lucky when it came to relationships. I was somehow self-doubting myself because of my past. Weeks turned to months. Kevin had stopped visiting. I thought he was busy with his girlfriend from Jersey City. That thought made me kind of jealous because I liked the guy, but he never noticed me. And another thing, I missed being in his presence. During those months, I tried calling him, but his phone was not going through, which made me worried, and I felt lonely because he had been the best friend I had never had. But all of a sudden, he decided to ghost me. I stayed with the guilt that maybe he saw my flirtatious acts and decided to stop being friends with me. But I would ask myself why he didn't tell that to me in the face, rather than to just ghost me. I was angry at him for acting like a coward. I was kind of disappointed at him for the coward act he did. Little did I know that his very own stepdad was the actual reason why Kevin was no longer visiting Aurora. It saddened me when I found out that, and worst part, I didn't know where Kevin stayed. I just knew that he stayed in Jersey City, and that was all. The stepdad once approached me and asked me to help him with some papers at his house. At first, I bluntly refused because the man was scaring me, and why the sudden change of heart. I mean, he never even greeted me, even if we bumped into each other in shops. Then he came to my house asking me to help him with papers. It was just hard buying that. It took him to ask my father that he needed my help with his papers since I was working at an accounting firm. Obviously, my father would ask me to help him on his behalf. I tried explaining to my father how scared I was of the guy, but decided to talk me out of it, so I eventually agreed. I mean, most of the time I was doing nothing at home. I was bored. Kevin was no longer visiting, and he had ghosted me all of a sudden. It did sting to me that he had changed on me right when I had thought I had found a friend. As much as I loved going out a lot, but I didn't have any friends, and Kevin became the friend I had never had. I hated him for going AWOL on me like that. I was also disappointed at myself for pushing the guy away because of my slutty actions. Days passed. I went to the stepdad's house, and to my surprise, Kevin's mother was not around, which made me kind of uncomfortable. I asked him where his wife was, and he told me that she had gone to Jersey City to visit her children. I asked myself, why would a woman leave his children behind and go live in another city? I mean, if I had children, I would never leave them all alone and move to another city. Some mothers' parents would rather leave their children behind so they would live with their man. I just didn't understand it. So Mr. Spencer, stepdad, showed me the papers he wanted me to help him with. We went through them together. I showed him where things were wrong, like the transactions of his business and what made the business delay paying their taxes. There were a lot of loopholes in his business's spreadsheets, but I managed to help and explain to him what was happening. He then tried to ask me to come and work for him, but I politely refused. I mean, I loved my job and I didn't see myself working for any other company. To my surprise, the stepdad was not all bad as I had thought or seen him. He was actually cool and friendly. So time passed. I kept going to his house, to help him, of course. He was also a great distraction for me to not think about Kevin. Yes, I missed him, but it didn't come to me that he missed me as well. Mr. Spencer was a fun guy. He was also smart, and he taught me a lot about businesses that I didn't know. That was how we became close. He was like an uncle that I had never had. Little did I know that the big jackal had actually an agenda to get me. Time passed, and I had become a regular at Mr. Spencer's home. His wife, Kevin's mom, knew that I was helping Mr. Spencer with his business books, but she didn't notice the way we had become close. Mr. Spencer had become what I call a mentor or a guardian I had never had. He was teaching me a lot about businesses, which made me have thoughts of starting my own business eventually. I once told him that, and he said he was going to give me the capital to start whatever business I wanted to start. Well, that was an appetizing offer, but I couldn't accept it. On the other hand, Kevin came once to see his mother, but we didn't talk. It was like we were total strangers, and that broke my heart because I had thought we were on good terms. I tried asking him on social media. He never responded to any of my texts or calls. I wondered what had happened or what had he heard about that would make him act weird and cold towards me. My heart would always shut whenever I think about it, and it did hurt me a lot to be in the dark about what was eating him. Was I in love with the guy? Months passed. I got tired of waiting and crying over Kevin. I mean, it was not like we were dating or something. So as hard as it was to forget about him, I tried. The guy had ghosted since I don't know when. Even the heart that loves also gets tired, right? What infuriated me the most was that he made me believe that I would somehow be his girlfriend, or we would be as close and tight as we were till eternity. But I had thought wrong. Instead, I got hurt and waited on something that was just a dream to me. During those months, Mr. Spencer became not only my mentor, but also my best friend. He gave me the attention that even my own father didn't give me. He became my motivator and the best guardian. Mom tried warning me about being close with Mr. Spencer the way we were close, but I didn't listen. My mother would even ask what had happened between Kevin and I would not give her any answers because I also didn't know what had happened between Kevin and I. Mr. Spencer once invited me to one of his business trips because his wife was not feeling well to travel. So, as his tax manager, yes, I eventually took his job offer, he asked me to go with him. When I told my parents about that, there was a huge argument between Mom and Dad. My father thought it was a great opportunity for me to learn more about business, and that Mr. Spencer had been a good mentor, while my mother was against everything. My mother said Mr. Spencer was up to something, and if I was not careful, I would become like one of his past victims. Only if I had listened to my mother, sick. So Mr. Spencer and I went to the United Arab Emirate, UAE, for the business trip. I fell in so much love with the country. It was so beautiful. I even wished to move to it one day with Kevin, of course. Mr. Spencer booked us separate rooms, which I appreciated a lot. Later on, he asked me to wear it nicely. I was going to be his date at some business gala dinner. The man just did the unthinkable and gave me money to purchase a dress. As much as I was not comfortable with the way he was looking at me, I loved the dress I had chosen. After the gala dinner, we went to our separate rooms. My heart and soul longed for Kevin, but he wasn't there. I tried calling him with an international number. He answered, but when he heard it was me, he dropped the call, so can you imagine how heartbroken I was when he did that? As I had finished taking a shower, Mr. Spencer knocked into my room and asked me to help him with something urgently. Mind you, that time I was only in my hotel gown, so I went to open the door to let him in. He stared at me like he was looking at something he liked or loved. It really made me uncomfortable and felt like I was not dressed. I asked what he wanted me to help him with. He didn't answer me. Instead, he just complimented me and my body. That somehow made me feel beautiful because no guy had ever complimented me or my body, not even my ex-boyfriend. Well, my ex-boyfriend was a womanizer, so he never cared about how my body looked, but instead, he would always find a way to make me doubt myself. Almost my whole life, I had been body shamed. You know, always being told and reminded how imperfect your body shape is and how bad I looked. So hearing someone or having someone compliment me and my body always does something to me. It raises my self-esteem a little. But on another thought, I would doubt someone who compliments my body would say it genuinely and mean it. I mean, because my ex-boyfriend would compliment me whenever he wanted some intimacy. Then I would think he meant it. But things change whenever we get into an argument, or I find out that he was cheating. He would remind me how bad looking I was and how my body was badly shaped compared to the girls that he was cheating on me with. But the way Mr. Spencer was looking at me made me think that he meant it, and he had been complimenting me since we went to the gala dinner that he had asked me to accompany him to. The way his stares were intense, they made me uncomfortable, so I excused myself. So I would go to the bathroom and change to proper clothes, because I wouldn't, and I couldn't change in front of him since the hotel room has only one bedroom with an ensuite. When I got into an ensuite, I was able to breathe since I was holding my breath and felt goosebumps over my body. I didn't know why I felt like that, but I did. I took them as my mentor and my father's friend. Was I falling for him? But nah, I wasn't. After I'd changed, I joined him in the room. We started working, going through what he wanted us to go through, but I felt his eyes stinging on my body. So I tried to distract him and get him to shift his focus. I asked if he had eaten so we could order. Instead of answering my question, he started touching my cheeks and brushing them. My heart was beating so fast to a point that I didn't even know how to react and what to do, so I just went mute. He started complimenting me again, telling me some sweet words. My mind just froze. I didn't even think of the circumstances that would come if his wife was to find out what her husband was doing. I felt butterflies on my stomach when he kissed me. To tell the truth, I don't remember and know what happened after, but I found myself kissing him back but backed out after. I had realized that I had made a huge mistake. I had a huge love crush on his stepson, and I was still heartbroken by the fact that he had ghosted me for no valid reason. Wasn't that being a coward? The stepdad kissed me again, and that time it went too far because I was also feeling the heat. I had never gotten a kiss or been intimate with a male person after my ex-boyfriend, who I broke up with 2 years ago. So imagine the drought and hunger for sexual engagement I had. It was bad. The kiss got intense to a point that no one was thinking about anything but was in the moment, and we made love. To tell the truth, I didn't regret any moment that I had with Mr. Spencer. Why would you feel guilty for something you both did, and you both were adults? Plus, I was single and sexually frustrated, so he helped me remember that I was still alive and I was still a woman, even though he was a married man, but I cared less. One thing that I had regretted was that we were careless and too caught up in the moment, to a point that we even forgot to use a protection. I didn't know if the guy had a sickness or what, meaning I risked getting sick and pregnant just to get in the moment. I was a fool, right? Months later, the thing that had started in the hotel room in the United Arab Emirate, UAE, between Mr. Spencer and I kept going on until we went back home. I won't lie and say I didn't enjoy every moment of it, but I did. Yes, what we did was wrong in every way, but I had a good time. Actually, I had the most splendid time of my life. We destroyed a lot of relationships, and I would always feel so bad about it. During those months, Mr. Spencer and I continued seeing each other secretly, regardless of the outcome of it. So one cold summer day, Mr. Spencer had invited me to his house. His wife was in the hospital because she had not been feeling too well, and that led her to the hospital. So as I was chilling and cuddling with Mr. Spencer, we heard the door open, but we ignored it thinking it was the house helper. I mean, she knew what was happening between Mr. Spencer and I. To my surprise, it was not the helper, but Kevin himself. I didn't know how to react, really, but his facial expression was full of anger and disappointment, I think. He didn't say anything. Instead, he asked to speak to me on the side. I didn't know what he wanted to speak about, and I didn't care because I had blocked and deleted his number. I mean, he had ghosted me for way too long. Yes, I still had those feelings for him, but I got tired of waiting for the train that was not going anywhere or making any progress. When we spoke on the side, he asked what I was doing with his stepdad and why I didn't respect his mother's marriage and house. We argued until he got pretty angry, and I accidentally got a slap from him. I couldn't believe it, you know. I thought I was dreaming. The guy I had feelings for slapped me, though it was accidentally, but he did it in the end. After he slapped me, he furiously went to his stepdad and started attacking him. It was a real mess, I tell you. After some time, Kevin left and told us that he would destroy us. What hurt me the most was when he started crying and told me that he was actually looking forward to making me his girlfriend, but he didn't know how to express it without me feeling some type of way or rejecting him. No lies, that made me feel really bad, because I had thought he just ghosted me for months. Then when he found me with his stepdad, he confessed his feelings for me. It didn't make any sense, and it still doesn't. A few days later, I got a text from Kevin asking me to meet up with him. I was a bit skeptical because I didn't know what he wanted to say or do, so I took my little sister with me and went to Aurora Park just in case he was still angry and would want to slap me again. I knew I would have my loud sister, so he couldn't do anything bad in front of a child. So when we got there, well, we already found him there. He was no longer angry as he was when he saw me at Mr. Spencer's house. So we talked, and he told me the reason why he ghosted me. He also confessed his feelings for me. I also told him how I felt, but there was only one problem. I had fallen for Mr. Spencer, and it was really hard for me to decide who I wanted to be with. I mean, I liked Mr. Spencer for his tender attention and care, and I loved Kevin in another way. Was I being a hypocrite and an ungrateful bastard? Weeks later, I heard that Mrs. Spencer, Kevin's mother, found out about the affair that I had with her husband, and she didn't take it too well. Mind you, she was going in and out of hospitals because she had a heart problem, so when she heard about the affair, she got a heart attack and passed on. It was really an emotional and sad period for Kevin and Mr. Spencer. Worst part, Kevin blamed me for his mother's passing, and he had all the right to. I blamed myself for everything that was happening at Kevin's house. I mean, his siblings had lost the only parent they had. A lot changed. My parents also found out about what was happening between Kevin's stepdad and I. My relationship with my parents changed for the worst. My mother kept reminding me how careless I was and that she had warned me about Mr. Spencer. It was really bad. On the other hand, my father was really disappointed at me, and there was nothing I could have done to make things right because Kevin had lost his mother because of my selfishness and hunger for sexual interaction. Things went south for me to a point that I found myself in between everything. I didn't know if I was going in or going out, if the sun was rising or setting. It was a mess. Yes, I was also part of the facade that had taken Kevin's mother's life, but Mr. Spencer was also part of it, but my parents didn't see that. Instead, I was the only one in the wrong. I once received long text messages from one of Kevin's sisters telling me how much I had disappointed Kevin. I knew I had disappointed Kevin to the core, and it was really eating me up because he once had told me, or must I say, he jokingly told me that he was seeing a future with me. But I took that as a joke. I mean, we were friends. Yes, we would act like lovers whenever we were together. But that was it. Not knowing or noticing that he was confessing his feelings, or that he saw me as his future lover. I didn't know, or must I say, I didn't pay any attention to his hints, so I did the dumbest thing I had ever done in my whole life. Months passed. I tried speaking to Kevin to apologize to him, but I couldn't reach out to him. I mean, he had gone back to Jersey City full-time since his mother was no more so. He didn't have any reason to visit Aurora anymore. It was really hard for me because my father had told me to stop working for Mr. Spencer and go back to my old job, of which I didn't want to do because despite what had happened between Mr. Spencer and I, he was paying me well for my service. And that added fuel in an already blazing fire. During those months when I was at home, bored, so I decided to check my social media because it had been a long time since I had checked my socials to see what was trending and going on in the world. The first thing I saw were pictures of me and Mr. Spencer. Someone had posted them and wrote a lot of bad things about me. I suspected Kevin because he was the only person who was pretty much angry at me and his stepdad. People were dragging my name to the mud to a point that I found myself in a very depressing stage. I wanted to just go away to an unknown continent where no one would know me. The way my name was dragged, it was like I was the only one on the wrong. They were not calling Mr. Spencer by names, but I was called names. I was called a homewrecker and a murderer because Kevin's mother had lost her life because of the affair that had happened. I was furious, angry, and hurt because whoever did that really ruined my life and my reputation. Days later, I decided to take my savings and use them to find out who had linked the pictures of me and Mr. Spencer, only to find out that Mr. Spencer's house had cameras. The whole house had cameras, including the bedrooms, so the pictures were linked by the helper with Kevin's sister's help. My name was tarnished to a point that if I were to try and pick myself up, it would be hard. About a week later, my father told me that Mr. Spencer had been arrested because he was running an illegal business, while he took the one I was helping him with as a front. But I was also caught up in that crossfire because I was helping him with his business books, so I was asked to testify against him, or I would also get arrested for helping a criminal like him. I mean, I didn't know he was a criminal or was running an illegal business. All I did was help him balance his business's spreadsheets and tax payments. Was I wrong for doing that? As I was going through that hard, depressing phase of my life, I decided to ask for forgiveness from my parents and made a video of myself apologizing to Mrs. Spencer's children for what I did. I knew everything had consequences, but I never thought it would have come to that point, so I had to fix myself and try claiming back my life. After I had made the apology video, I sent it to Kevin's sister. I had her number when she texted me a long text swearing at me. I was feeling guilty. I should have listened to my mother, but I got selfish and ruined someone else's home. Worst part was that my suspicions about Mr. Spencer became true because I had suspected that he was doing something, but I ignored all that and fell in the trap of his bed with him. I tried calling Kevin after some time, with the hope that he would at least answer my call so I would apologize. Luckily, he did answer, but he didn't have my number anymore, so I had to start by explaining myself to him. So we talked and asked him to meet up with me so I would be able to show him how much I regretted everything that had happened between us. If I didn't give up on how I felt for him, and if I didn't fall for Mr. Spencer's tricks and traps, maybe, just maybe, I would be living my happily ever after with Kevin. I allowed the old man to manipulate me, and I was too naive, I know, and I lost a precious and perfect man just because I was weak and the stepdad was there to satisfy or give me the satisfaction that I had never had. Yes, my ex was giving me intimacy, but it was never to satisfy me but himself. After a week, Kevin and I met, and we managed to have a civilized talk. I told him about my past and how it made me weak to hear someone compliment me. Not that he never complimented me like telling me I was beautiful, but he had never complimented the whole me. I don't know if you get what I am trying to say. I had disappointed Kevin in the worst way possible. He forgave me, but he told me that he wanted nothing to do with me. The damage I had done was way beyond repairs because it was never going to bring his mother back. It really made me feel so bad, and I regret every action I did. It didn't only take Kevin's mother, but it also distanced my family. And I lost my future lover. Just like that for just one silly mistake. Please give me tips on how I should have avoided this and how will I overcome this. I am stuck and I need help on how to deal with the guilt and regret.